In today's episode of HR Visionaries, we talk to Lloyd. We talk about the challenges of tech recruiting. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to the latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm looking forward to my guest, Lloyd. It's great to have you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Lloyd, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you?
Who am I? My name's Lloyd Ponsford. I am the global head of TA for Mendix, which is a software company owned by Siemens, DISW. I've been here for just under 6 years. Started out as a sales recruiter, in fact, joined from Red Hat and worked my way through to European leader and eventually global leader. I'm a father of 5, 4 at home, married with a dog, a Doberman puppy, which is the bane of my life. Will probably attempt to hijack this podcast at some point. And an avid sports fan. But other than that, I'm a pretty simple, boring, basic guy.
Tell us a bit more about your journey from sales recruiting, European role, global role. So how have things changed for you?
Going back to the beginning, I started off as an agency recruiter, and I think, like most recruiters, ended up there by chance. Was working in a lowly sales role, placed in there by a recruiter. The company liquidated whilst we were all working, which was an experience to watch people start rioting. They lost their jobs. 200 people all at once lost their jobs. 18 to 22-year-olds, lots of testosterone in there. Got a phone call from the guy that placed me in the role, John, and he said, "Why don't you come down and see me at the office? I think that perhaps you could be useful to us in what we do." And from that moment on, just found myself in recruitment. I was comfortable in that type of role. I think it captured a lot of the things that had made me successful in other areas of my life, such as sports. It was competitive. It was a team sport, but it was based on individual performance. And just worked my way through. And as I started working through the agency world, and I job hopped a lot when I was younger as well, because I found that people were willing to pay you more money to do the same job in a different office. And given it was agencies, there was no culture. The culture was the same everywhere: make money or leave. So I did that, and I was always informed that internal recruitment was the graveyard for successful recruiters. And I bought into that concept fully and wholly until one day I was having a conversation with someone that was in internal, and I was like, this person's been paid a hell of a lot of money to do basically, or in principle, do half of the job that I'm doing, right? With less of the accountability, because when it goes wrong, I'm the person that gets blamed as the agency recruiter. The internal recruiter doesn't. He just goes, the agency was no good. So I saw this and I thought, that has to be the goal. I need to get to where they are. These people seem to be more respected. They seem to have more of a strategic vision around recruitment. And so eventually got a break in a company called Hewlett Packard. Never really looked back from there. From Hewlett Packard, went to SolarWinds to Red Hat. Red Hat, I got a phone call from an internal recruiter from Mendix. And they said that they had they were just under 500 people at the time in terms of the company. They had hypergrowth plans to scale globally, and they had a real problem or real issue with the sales identity here and how to actually grow the sales team. And that was largely down to the fact that the recruitment team was not specialized, which obviously, because I had worked in a sales recruitment agency and I'd only ever competed against other agencies of sales recruiters, it was odd to me that they had such generic recruiters in region that just worked. If you are German, you recruit for Germany, and if you are French, you recruit for France, or whatever the case may be. So I came in, I analysed, I done my job. I helped grow the US office, and I helped open the APAC office in terms of their go-to-market team there, placed the first few people, and then my journey from that point on is purely luck, circumstantial luck, I would say. People decided to leave at certain junctions or junctures in Mendix's growth, and I was effectively the only person left that maybe had a combination of the experience of being able to do the recruitment role, maybe answer the question, stand in front of people and be accountable for it, and the tenure to understand where the company had been and where it had got to. And so I was given the opportunity by a very new head of talent. He'd only been in the role himself a few months, to become the European leader. And then he quickly left afterwards, and I'm talking within 6 months, and they put me into the global TA role, and I've been there ever since. So that's, yeah, it's been a bit of a weird journey up until 3 years ago, and then, like I say, since then it's been a little bit more formal. I've been in the role, set up the team structure, verticalized and regionalized the business so that we had niche and specific recruiters working on specific business units, and set it up pretty much like an agency would, which in turn allowed us to achieve other things.
You mentioned before that, well, it was super weird for you that the recruiting team wasn't specialized. So there were, well, you said, okay, everyone who's German does Germany, well, which kind of makes sense, but it's, yeah, it's also limited logic behind that probably. How does an optimal talent acquisition team look like?
I think it differs depending on the size of the company. I think that, it's nuanced on when you're a huge corporate company. And if you take Siemens, our parent company, I mean, they're talking thousands of hires a year. So it may be somewhat unrealistic to think that every single recruiter has to have a specialism or has to focus on a particular area of the business, because it perhaps isn't scalable. But when you're a company of our size, we're 1,500 people currently. As I said, we came from 500. You do have the advantage of saying, well, okay, well, it makes sense to mirror the business so that you can offer the best service. What you want to do is deliver quality, and in order to deliver quality, you need to be in tune with what the business is trying to do, meet the business goals. So for me and our company, it's a case of, okay, well, let's create a go-to-market recruitment team and have them based regionally. So have a go-to-market leader of the US, the same for EMEA, same for APAC, and have that leader directly connected to the SVP of the region, so that they can talk through what should be the sales identity, which obviously happens globally. What do we hire? What is successful at Mendix as a salesperson or a pre-salesperson or whatever the case may be? But then the nuanced version of that. So in Germany, they have to, or in the Netherlands, this is how they have to, because that's culturally just how we do business in the region. So someone that's able to maybe adapt and understand the nuance of the region. But the reality is I need salespeople to understand sales language. And what's really interesting is we all recognize in the business that an R&D person, a developer, has a completely different personality profile. If you take PCM, just as whether you believe in it or not, but if you take PCM and you put it against a developer, then you do exactly the same thing against a senior AE. Hugely contrasting results in terms of their personality profiles. It only stands to logic that if you have a recruiter that's trying to understand these two types of people, and let's face it, I think one of the big misconceptions about recruitment is that you hear this like trying to find a needle in a haystack analogy all the time. It's not like that for recruiters. It's like trying to find a needle in a stack of needles. Everyone looks the same. And quite frankly, the only way you can determine which one is the one that you're looking for without an efficient process and without the knowledge and the expertise is just to prick yourself with every single one. And what I tend to see, especially in the larger companies, is their process is pick up them. This is your batch of needles for the day. And I want you to go through every single one, just doing this until you discover the one that you think is correct based on how you felt. And what we're trying to establish is, okay, well, let's first at least know the length of needles that are suitable to our company. Let's know the color, the size, how big the thread is, etc., what the purpose of it's for. And so for me, the sales recruiters, the R&D recruiters now, they're really dialed into the expectations of the managers about what good looks like in their world, and they understand it on a technical level as well. Methodologies, sales cycles, bonus structures, commission plans, how expansion deals, transactional deals. They understand not just the concept of it, but really the detail of the differences between those people and how they are successful in Mendix and why they're not successful in Mendix. And it also means that when building candidate pools, they're able to look at the market and start to acquire really specific knowledge about competitors. And I'm not talking about competitors of technology, but competitors of people that would hire the same profile as us. And then you can start to run insights and say, okay, well, what is this company doing over here? It's interesting that they've led off all of those salespeople, thinking about the needle and a stack of needle analogies. Most people are going to jump on this bandwagon because a SaaS company has led off 500 people. We already know, though, based on their bonus structure, based on the way that they comprise a deal, based on their deal cycle, that although that on paper these people are perfect for us, in reality they won't adapt to our environment because we've already spoken to enough of them to know that the structure of how they put together their go-to-market team differs so much from what we offer that even if they were the best salesperson in the world, they would have the worst culture and environment here to be able to work within. And when we say culture, we don't mean I want to have a beer with this person. I mean, literally, like if you bought a lizard and put it in a tank of water, it might survive for a little bit, but eventually it will drown because it needs a terrarium. And so that's what we're looking at here is, you can have the best salesperson in the world, but if you don't have the environment that's conducive to their success, they will look mediocre. And specialized recruiters have the ability to recognize that because it's the only thing that they're trying to look for, versus a generic recruiter that's regionally based that just thinks I need to make the hire. I need to get X amount of people in front of the hiring manager.
It sounds like you guys have a very analytical approach to things.
Try to, yeah, we try to. What I try and do is keep. I don't like arbitrary numbers. I never have done. Even when I was an individual contributor, I hated it when someone said, "Oh, we need you to make 50 hires." What a boring statement. It's such an arbitrary number, right? Like I get it that you have 50 seats open, but surely just by default, our starting position should be that the expectation is I will fill 50 seats if that's what we have. So setting it as a target for me seems almost nonsensical. So what I try to say to the team is it's all about activity and standards and quality. And so we take an approach of, or certainly I take the approach, when I look at the team, it makes no sense for myself to base my standards for success against Benjamin's standards for success, because me and Benjamin might make 50 placements per year, for argument's sake, each. But I might make 100 calls and Ben might make 10 calls per placement. Now, traditional values of KPIs and standards would suggest that you're doing the job more successfully than I am. I would argue if we do it in the same time frame, the only tax being paid by one person is time, but the reality, the result is the same. So actually, all that really matters to me is not how many calls you make, not how many people you speak to, not how many placements you make, but the quality of what you're doing with that time. So against your best self, I would like to see, if we recognize it takes you 10 calls or 10 meetings with candidates in order to make one placement, because 5 of those make it into the process, 3 make it through to the final, 2 potentially are going to get offered, 1 takes the job. And I see you really investing time in your 10 recs, and you've got 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, 12 here, 8 here. That's where I would look and say, it's great that you've got 12 here, but that 8 number that you have on this one rec, if we annualize that, we will figure at the end of the year, what we will probably see is that you will miss more hires through that number 8 than you will make as a result of that number 12, because we know this based on your best self, not your colleague's best self. So that's a good example of where, for me, data is important. I think the rest of the data and an analysis of the market comes down to experience, doing the job, conversations, listening to people, understanding what they want.
Exactly. So, staying in that analogy there with the 10 versus 100, one could argue, okay, well, if you do 100 calls, you probably have like a good feeling about, well, the market in general, a good feeling about, okay, what people to miss. On the other hand, one could argue, okay, if you do only do 10 people, either you know your shit, your stuff extremely well, or, well, you're going to miss out on great many opportunities. So there's always like some things, some perspective to the argument, right?
Yeah, I suppose, again, for me, I could summarize it by saying this. I think most people set their objectives in recruitment as to make a hire, to make an offer. I think a hire or an offer should be a symptom of good recruitment. It's something that should happen as a result of a very good process put together by a recruitment team. And so if you make it the objective, you actually, I think you obscure the point of what someone is doing, and you reduce it down to, no matter how you do it or what you do or how good you do it, as long as you make a placement at the end, you've achieved your set goal. Which, why I go back to these arbitrary numbers about placements. It's like, no. A symptom should be a hire happens if you do your job, which is deliver a quality candidate experience and a quality service to the business. Because ultimately, we're a service-led, we're a service-led business unit for internally, right? So people come to us, they subscribe to our services, and we provide recruitment services. But the reality is the quality of what we do. So anyone, I think, can make a placement in recruitment if they do it long enough. If you just do enough of it, you will end up placing someone. It's almost a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. But so what we're trying to really do is say, okay, well, how did we make the placement? We want to be able to have a conversation with the manager sometimes where we say, listen, we've got 2 in the final here. This is our recommendation. And it may be the one that seemingly is second place right now. And we say, look, what we've noticed is when we look at the profile, when we look at some of the answers they've given, we recognize that although this one initially is the better candidate of the 2, this one's ceiling is much higher. And given the cost factor of the 2 of them, we're not paying a lot less or a lot more to this individual. But what we see is that this person's talk about where they want to go, their journey, how that maybe coincides with other people we've hired in the past. We feel like it's going to be more successful, and we're getting into that partnering with the business, really trying to be an extension of the SVP or the R&D manager or the CTO or whoever it is. It's really trying to be an extension of them and their teams, so that we can have a consultative approach to how we hire, and not just, oh, you want people, there's CVs. Like, it's not cattle. But I think people want it to be that. They want to herd people up, send them in one direction, and just hope that something happens.
I'm wondering, what's your approach, how to build a strong partnership with your business counterpart? I've spoken to many TA leaders, and well, I think we can all agree that this is one of the key aspects of the job, to have a strong relationship. So what's your approach to build that strong relationship?
I think it depends on the person you're trying to build the relationship with. I think there's always 2 types of people especially internally. There's always 2 types of hiring managers: those that believe in what you do, and those that believe it's a necessary evil. Some people some people believe that the only reason you're doing the job for them is because they simply don't have the time. But if they did, they wouldn't choose to use you. But ironically, they're also normally the first people to suggest that we go to an agency. And those that do believe in you, but they're also super inquisitive. So they want to be involved in every element of the process. We're teammates, we're buddies, like, let's do this together. We're in the boat together type thing. For me, it's about really trying to understand what the person's pain point is within hiring. I think most people have a specific pain point that occurs naturally and regularly. And once I understand that, it's about taking the time to not correct someone from the get-go where you see mistakes, not going in and saying you're wrong because, which is doubly important for those that believe that you're a necessary evil, because they already don't, but they believe that what you're doing is pseudoscience at best. And so going in there and saying, actually, I don't like the way that you're asking the interviews. I don't like the way you've structured that interview. It could be better. We could be captured. It's going to fall on deaf ears. So I tend to take the approach of trying to understand what they think the problem is, giving them examples of the problem, talking through how that manifests in their team and what else that's created, and then showing them alternatives within what they're asking for. So if I find someone that's asking me for something I don't think is going to be successful, or I don't think is the right way to go about it, I find some of that, but I put it against some examples of what I do think is correct. And then we have an honest conversation about it. Look, I get it. Let's go one for one. You see this profile, but I would like you to have a conversation with this profile too. I've already had a conversation with this person for the best part of an hour. We've gone back and forth on emails. I've screened their background. I've looked through their company details. All I ask is, out of courtesy, you speak to this person and this person. And that's where the confidence part comes in. If you've done the job, you're confident in your abilities, you feel like you understand the profile, you've done a good analysis of the current team, so you've seen what's been successful. If you're well prepared, if the axe is well sharpened, when you swing it, it should do its job. And so for me, have the confidence to push back on a manager, not in such a way that it's abrasive, but rather, okay, let's take a two-pronged approach. Here's you, here's me. Which one do you prefer, or do you find them to be both the same? At the very least, can we accept, or can we consider that there are alternatives to your gold standard expectation, Mr. Manager and Mrs. Manager? And that's normally the problem, is expectation versus reality is the reason why you need to build a relationship with the manager in the first place. Because we get brought in at a time when they say, listen, I've worked with recruitment people before, they never seem to understand what I'm looking for, or they just send me lots of profiles and I end up having to sift through them and they're wrong, and that's why I use an agency. And I always say, like, the irony of saying that you use an agency versus your internal team's been here for 10 years, and an agency is most likely going to be a 19-year-old fresh out of college that's been doing it for 6 months and has put specialist in front of his name. The irony is palpable. Like, I need someone with experience. You find someone with the least amount of experience. But yeah, for me, I don't know, building relationships is a difficult one. Some people you can't build relationships with. And that's the God's honest truth. There are some people where you have to accept as people, you are not compatible. So trying to reach them on a level where it's going to be an amicable discussion is going to be very, very difficult. But then that's where my role really steps in. Sometimes I notice that there are people in my team, they are not compatible with some of the hiring managers. So it's my idea, like a chessboard, to go, actually, I can't go in that direction. I have to move this person over here, have them deal with that hiring manager, have this person come over here, different relationship, and we go from there.
How long did it take you to realize, hey, there are those people where it's not possible to create a productive, mutual respected relationship?
I mean, as a leader, not very long. As a individual contributor, it took me quite a while. I think, especially in my younger days, you may find me walking out of a room going, that guy's a prick. And then not realizing maybe I'm a prick, and he's okay. But I think for me, I think no one wants to accept that for some reason on some level you are not liked, or you do not like them. I don't think many people want to accept that there is someone on the planet where I just don't get on with them, and it's not because I don't get on with it, it's because they don't get on with me. They don't like me. They don't like the way I communicate, or they don't like the style in which I communicate, or whatever it may be. But the reality is it does happen. And so, yeah, I don't know how long it took me I think it would have taken me a long time as an IC. In my current capacity and in my role now, I already have the benefit of that knowledge. So my biggest battle now is sometimes explaining to a TA person that's very proud and is very, especially one that's probably not used to coming. I would say I'm quite a Marmite. personality. I accept that there's quite a lot of people that may not like my style, which is fine. Like I say to people, you don't have to like me in order to know that I'm doing a good job. You can hate me from a distance. It's fine. But trying to explain to, say, one of my team members who perhaps does get on with absolutely everybody, and then they experience this manager for the first time, and they happen to not maybe get on with them, they don't give them the time, they don't give them the respect that they deserve. I think it can be really difficult for them. But it's about me just kind of arm round, and that's where I say you maneuver this person away quite quickly. Hey, listen, look, I actually think you can do a better job with this person over here. What I'm going to do is put such and such on this account or on this hiring manager. Just because we know what that manager's like, and I don't want you wasting your time with someone that you're not going to be successful with, and that's the best way to handle it.
Yeah, I think in particular for talent acquisition, it's like a really important issue to make sure you work with those people you can really work with. Given, well, in the end, it's not like your procurement, like getting material on board, but you get people on board, and they then also need to work together very well, like for 8-9 hours a day.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Is, I mean, we're working really hard here to create a culture whereby there are some thresholds that you have to meet to even qualify to work at Mendix. I think, like most companies, right? I don't say that as in we're unique, but I think we're still really working on ours right now as to where that is and what that looks like. But when you have a situation where clearly the recruiter and the manager don't see eye to eye, perhaps they're not well in tune. Some of the problems that opens up is when we think about trying to identify someone that would be able to fit the culture of that team specifically, it's going to be hugely difficult for them to do it because they can't comprehend or they can't resonate with the manager's culture, with how the manager's style is. And so therefore trying to find someone that's not just good at their job, but also will fit into that team. They're already very resistant to the idea of the person. It would be wholly unfair to then say to the person, "We'll continue, get through it. You'll be fine. You'll manage to recruit." You might recruit good people, but they won't survive because those people and those personalities. None of us get off the phone with a candidate, or very few of us get off the phone with a candidate and say, "I couldn't stand that candidate. I'm going to put them through." But you get off the phone with a manager and go, "I can't stand that manager, but I'm still going to do the recruitment for him." And it's like, that's where I think some leaders, if they don't do it already, should maybe think, that's illogical, right? Like, we would never do it with a candidate. Why would I expect the recruiter be able to do it with the manager? It's just not going to happen. They're going to waste a lot of time finding good people that would be great in one team, but in this specific team will never fit in.
When you get new people on your team, how do you get them going? How do they get the so how do they get on board? How do you make them execute their first tasks?
So there's two types of profiles that we hire. We take on very junior people with no experience, and we start them off as sources, and then we take on senior recruiters. So I start with the sources. I think it's more interesting. Sources they come in with the expectation to learn. So you're going to do half admin. You're going to learn to schedule. We do have a TA ops team, but I think it's really important for junior recruiters that maybe haven't come from a background of recruitment, where, my more senior recruiters remember the days when there were no such thing as TA ops people. You had to schedule your own appointments, do your own contracts. They don't need to learn that facet of it.
Great.
Yeah, exactly. They understand
Everyone
that this was
that.
a 360 role at some point. But for the benefit of junior recruiters, it's a case of, well, you don't understand that principle. You almost haven't earned the right to have the easy mode yet. So I get them in, and I think it's really important that they understand how our process works, because we've standardized it, and there's an almost a science to it in terms of, in our heads, this is our expectation by running it this way. So we teach them all of the facets of recruitment before you actually recruit: what to do with a candidate, how to process them through the system, how to communicate with them via email, why it's important to set up certain touch points before and after interviews, before and after meetings, etc. And then we pair them up with a recruiter that we think is the correct way, the correct profile for them, if you will, the one that they're most likely to learn off. But we pass them around the entire team so that they get to experience all different facets of the team and different types of approaches to work. But then we start to put metrics in place to say, okay, you're a sourcer. Once you have started building pipelines, then we will start to look at those pipelines. How many of those candidates that you built for the TA partner made it through to the decision maker interview, which is our first stage? And so let's say that they built a pipeline of 50 people, and of those 50, we select 10, we shortlist 10, and of those 10, one makes it through. We say that's a really good start. But when we get so that 5 make it through to the decision maker interview, we may not put all of them into the process, but 5 could be selected to put through to the decision maker. Now you're ready for the next step, which is now you're ready to start submitting candidates to the hiring manager via the TA partner. So that discussion will still take place with the TA partner. There's still that safety net there where he's not going to, you know, he or she is not going to let you make a huge mistake. But we progressively build you up so that you can start to see how you're developing. You're developing because previously you didn't know how to build a pipeline. Now you do. Then you didn't know whether the pipeline was successful. Now you know why it's successful. Now you know why it's successful. You see it become more successful. You realize that it's ready to be used more formally, more regularly. And then that process continues, I would say, throughout the first 14 to 16 months, really depends on how quick it takes someone to learn. And what you end up with is a fully established junior recruiter that works on very specific roles, typically BDR roles, low-level CSM roles, maybe less technical R&D roles. And what we say to them is, okay, so our expectation for you to move from junior to medium recruiter is that you have to be able to put a maximum of 10 candidates in front of a decision maker in order to get an offer. Senior recruiters, the expectation is 5. If we're doing it more than 5, we're not a senior recruiter. That's not to say you're not a good recruiter. It just means to say that you're not a senior recruiter. And that comes back to expectations and accountability. For me to know when to deploy a senior recruiter to solve a problem, I need to be able to guarantee, thinking about the quality of the service that we're selling to the business, especially those that don't believe in what we're doing. I need to be sure that a senior recruiter understands the quality is 5 candidates. And this person knows that expectation and they know how to be accountable for that pressure because they understand the market in which they're working in, which is full circle where the specialism within that market really starts to come into play.
Lloyd, I had like a million more questions, but I think we need to record a second one indeed. It was very good to have you. Thanks a lot for your insights. It was super interesting to listen.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
And all of you guys, thanks a lot for listening in. I think we learned a lot about how important it is to build great relationships with the business as a recruiter, as a TA team member. See you next time.